if you're confronting, overwhelming financial distress, the word bankruptcy can feel like the absolute end, like a surrender.
It has that finality to it.
But in reality, for millions of people and for businesses too, it's not an end. It's more of a strategic reset. It's a legal lifeline that's designed to help you reorganize and, crucially, keep operating.
Yeah, that's the key misconception right there. People immediately think of Chapter 7, where everything gets sold off.
Right. Liquidation.
Exactly. But today, we're doing a deep dive specifically into the options that are built for survival. We're talking about Chapter 11 and Chapter 13. These are the paths for staying in business or, keeping your home.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to really pull apart the nuts and bolts. Who qualifies for what? What are the debt ceilings that sort of act as gatekeepers?
Yeah.
And I find this part fascinating. What does it actually mean when a giant corporation like General Motors files Chapter 11 versus an individual trying to save their house with Chapter 13?
Well, the sources give us some really detailed comparisons, and they also get into the specific debt limits, which, by the way, are always changing. And we've got some powerful real-world examples that show how these two chapters are used across the entire economic spectrum.
From the kitchen table to the boardroom, basically.
Pretty much.
All right, let's unpack this. The core distinction right away. The fundamental difference seems to be scope and intent.
That's it. Chapter 11 is this broad, incredibly complex, and very expensive tool. It's mostly for businesses trying to restructure.
And Chapter 13.
Chapter 13 is much more specific. It's a limited option, really targeted at individuals who have a steady income and they need a structured payment plan to get back on their feet.
So that one distinction really guides everything else, doesn't it? Starting with who's even eligible.
It does. Let's start with Chapter 11. It's incredibly broad. Almost anyone can file it. We're talking individuals, partnerships, LLCs, corporations of any size.
So Chapter 11 is the choice. When the problem is huge, it's complicated, and your goal isn't to shut down, but to restructure and keep the whole thing running.
Precisely. And there's no specified debt limit for Chapter 11. That's what makes it the go-to for, very wealthy people or massive companies. An individual can file Chapter 11, but the complexity, the cost, it usually only makes sense if they're way over the Chapter 13 limits or have really complex business assets to protect.
Okay, now let's contrast that with Chapter 13, the wage earners plan. That nickname says a lot.
It really does. It's defined by its limitations. First, it's exclusively for individuals. You have to have a regular, stable income.
And here's the big hurdle, right? The debt limits.
The biggest hurdle. Based on our sources, the limits until April 2022 were, about $465,000 in unsecured debt. So credit cards, medical bills, and around $1.4 million in secured debt, like your mortgage.
And if you're over those numbers, you're just out.
You're out. You're just ineligible for Chapter 13. You might be forced into the complexity of Chapter 11 at that point.
It's interesting why that stable income isn't just, a nice to have, but an absolute must-have for Chapter 13.
It's the engine. It's what drives the whole plan. See, unlike Chapter 7, which is just liquidation, Chapter 13 requires a repayment plan. It's structured over 3 to 5 years. If you don't have that reliable income stream, you can't make those monthly payments to the trustee.
And the whole thing just falls apart.
The whole thing falls apart. That stable income is foundational.
Okay, let's switch gears to the big leagues. Chapter 11. The complexity, the strategy, and why it's so expensive.
It is, hands down, the most complex and costly bankruptcy proceeding. The core of it is the reorganization plan. The filer, usually the company's own management, proposes this plan to the court and to the creditors.
And this isn't just a budget, it's a whole restructuring blueprint.
It's a radical blueprint. It can cover everything from downsizing operations to slashing expenses, all with the goal of getting back to long-term solvency.
I think the real aha moment from looking at the sources on this isn't just that they pay less debt, it's what else they gain.
Yeah.
You look at the financial crisis in the late 2000s, General Motors, Chrysler, they both filed Chapter 11 in 2009.
GM's was the largest industrial filing in history at the time.
Right. And what they really gained, beyond the emergency government funds, was the power to just instantly renegotiate or legally reject thousands of legacy contracts.
Yes, supplier agreements, union contracts, things that were crippling them. Outside of bankruptcy, trying to change those could take years, cost billions. Chapter 11 is like this financial surgery. It cleans out decades of organizational plaque almost overnight.
We saw that same play run again during the pandemic, didn't we? Retailers like JCPenney, Neiman Marcus.
J.Crew, Hertz.
Hertz, right. All of them filed Chapter 11, and they all emerged. They were often smaller, sure. JCPenney closed about 175 stores, but it restructured restructured.
Mm.
J. Crew actually managed to open new locations after it came out. So it's proof that Chapter 11 is about survival. It lets them shed that baggage, like bad leases or old contracts, and come out healthier.
And we saw a very recent example with SVB Financial Group, the parent company of Silicon Valley Bank. They filed in March 2023.
After the bank run.
Exactly. After interest rate hikes destroyed their bond portfolio's value, they used Chapter 11 to try and reorganize what was left. It just shows how flexible the tool is. It's not just for car makers or department stores.
That power and flexibility comes with that massive price tag, which puts it out of reach for most small businesses. So how did the system address that gap?
They finally streamlined it. Congress passed the Small Business Reorganization Act in 2019, which took effect in February 2020. It added a new process called Subchapter 5 to Chapter 11.
Okay, so a kind of Chapter 11 light. What does that do for smaller companies?
It created a much less painful path for businesses with less than about $2.7 million in debt. It has shorter deadlines, which means lower legal fees, and much more flexibility in negotiating a plan. And crucially, it appoints a private trustee whose job is to help get a consensual plan done.
It sounds much less adversarial.
It is, and during the pandemic, the CARES Act temporarily raised that debt limit way up to $7.5 million.
Wow.
Yeah, they wanted to make sure smaller businesses struggling because of COVID could access this faster path to reorganization. It really shows a philosophical shift.
How so?
Well, the legal system seems willing to bend the rules to prioritize keeping a business going rather than just liquidating it.
Okay, let's pivot to the Chapter 13 experience. This is much more personal, focused on individuals trying to save their assets.
That is the #1 goal of Chapter 13, saving assets. It's the tool you use if you're facing foreclosure on your house or repossession of your car. These are assets that Chapter 7 often can't protect.
And it all centers around that mandatory repayment plan. You, the filer, have to submit this detailed plan saying how all of your disposable income will be used to pay back your debts over the next 3 to 5 years.
And here's a huge difference from Chapter 11. Chapter 13 requires a trustee. This trustee acts like a court-appointed financial director for your life for up to 5 years.
So they collect the money.
They collect your full monthly payment, which is basically all your income after the court decides what your necessary expenses are, and then they distribute it to your creditors. That oversight is mandatory. There's no getting around it.
That 3 to 5 year period, it sounds like an absolute marathon, especially being under that kind of scrutiny. Could you ever extend it?
Not usually. The commitment period is set by law. But again, that CARES Act adjustment also applied here. It temporarily allowed Chapter 13 plans to be extended up to 7 years to give people more breathing room if their income was disrupted by the pandemic.
And unlike Chapter 7, where the relief is fast, the actual debt discharge in Chapter 13, that only happens after you've completed the entire plan, years down the road.
Precisely. You don't get that relief until you've proven you can stick to the plan for years.
So to put this all in context, we really need to compare it to the fast option, the liquidation alternative, Chapter 7.
Right. Chapter 7 is the quick fix. Any assets that aren't exempt under the law, a vacation home, expensive jewelry, things like that, are sold by a trustee. The proceeds are paid to creditors.
The upside is it's fast. Most debts are gone in just a few months.
The huge downside is you can lose that non-exempt property.
But it's the court, not you, that ultimately decides if you can even use Chapter 7. This is where the infamous means test comes in.
Think of the means test as the bouncer at the Chapter 7 club. It looks at your average income for the last 6 months and compares it to the median income for a family your size in your state. If your income is lower, you're usually good to go.
And if you're above the median?
If you're above the median, it's not an automatic no, but there's a second step. The bouncer pulls out a calculator. It subtracts all your allowable expenses, housing, food, certain payments. If the number that's left shows you have enough disposable income to start repaying your debts,
the court will probably push you into Chapter 13.
Exactly. They'll basically say you can afford to pay something, so you have to use the repayment plan.
It's a huge decision no matter what chapter you're looking at.
Yeah.
The sources really stress that this should be a last resort because of the long-term consequences. So what are the absolute must-do steps before you even file?
First, and this is non-negotiable, talk to an attorney. Bankruptcy law is complex. An expert is essential. Second, you are legally required to attend a credit counseling session from a government-approved agency.
And that costs money, but it's accessible.
Right, it's about $50. But if you can prove you can't afford the fee, they have to provide it for free. The counselor goes over your situation and looks at non-bankruptcy alternatives.
You also have to create this Exhaustive list of every single debt you have, right?
Right.
Secured versus unsecured.
Yes, and that's critical because secured debts, like your mortgage, get higher priority in any repayment plan. And that brings up the main point. Always explore the alternatives first.
Like negotiating directly with creditors.
Or seeking a loan modification, a forbearance, an extended repayment plan. If your problem is tax debt, you can file an offer in compromise with the IRS. All of these are less costly and much less damaging to your credit than bankruptcy.
So let's talk about the aftermath. The court issues a discharge. What does that actually mean?
It means legal relief. You are permanently relieved of the liability to pay that debt. And crucially, creditors are legally barred from any collection activity. No calls, no letters. The court has zero tolerance for that.
And the timeline for that relief is just worlds apart between these chapters.
Completely. Chapter 7 is fast. Discharge usually comes just 4 to 6 months after you file. Chapter 13 is an endurance test. The discharge only happens after you complete the 3 to 5 year payment plan.
Now for the painful part. The big caveat. Bankruptcy does not erase everything. What debts are totally non-dischargeable?
The list is strict. The big ones are student loans, though there are very rare exceptions. Also child support and spousal support, criminal fines, and most federal and state taxes. Those stick with you.
And finally, the long shadow this casts on your credit report. A 10-year hit sounds incredibly punitive.
It's severe. Chapter 13 stays on your report for up to 7 years from the filing date. Chapter 7, because it's a liquidation, stays on there for up to 10 years. Getting new, unsecured credit will be very difficult and expensive right now.
But recovery is possible.
Yeah.
The sources are clear on how to start rebuilding.
It just takes discipline and time. The main strategy is to establish a new, consistent track record of on-time payments. A common tool is a secured credit card, where you put down a deposit as your credit limit.
And you use that responsibly to build a new history.
Exactly. You manage that perfectly, make every payment on time, and you start to build a fresh post-bankruptcy credit history. Over time, your score improves.
Okay, so to synthesize this whole deep dive,
Yeah.
Chapter 11 is the big, complex tool for large-scale restructuring, mostly for businesses. No debt limits, designed to keep operating.
Chapter 13 is the meticulously planned route for individuals with a steady income who want to save their assets. It has a rigid, multi-year payment plan and strict debt limits.
And Chapter 7 is the quick, full liquidation alternative.
And the biggest takeaway has to be this. Because the laws, and especially those dollar limits, are always changing, you have to talk to a legal or financial professional. Your specific situation determines which path is right for you.
This all brings us to a final thought for you to consider. We've talked about the extraordinary measures that have been taken. New laws like Subchapter 5, temporary extensions through the CARES Act, all designed to help companies like GM and Hertz restructure rather than just fail. The sources show us the system is often willing to bend the rules for organizational continuity. So what does that tell us about the current value our society places on keeping a big organization alive versus the simple moral idea of just paying your debts back immediately? It suggests that, at least in the eyes of the law, keeping a corporation running is often seen as a greater economic good, which makes you wonder, what is the true hidden cost of allowing failure?